Alrighty. Hi, I'm Irene Pasternack, doing Feldenkrais for Northwest Parkinson's. And we just got back from a breakout room talking about eyes and how Parkinson's has affected your vision, your eyes. And I'd like to hear some of the conclusions of, were there patterns in your group of what you notice?
I think I noticed that everybody was already wearing glasses when they were diagnosed.
Okay. So yeah, I was noticing too that it's a high number of us in the group who are wearing glasses. Did anybody have trouble with dry eyes or feeling okay, dry eyes, feeling like it's harder to scan, like if you put your keys down or your purse down or something down, to find it again?
That's not dry eye.
Dry eyes, but there sometimes can be a like a little loss of mobility of the eyes, that they don't feel like they're as sort of ready to go in a different direction as they. Yeah. Any other things that people have noticed related to eyes?
I had problems with getting kind of an infection in the eye, and it caused me to lose most of my vision from the right eye. I don't really blame it on Parkinson's,
But it compounds some of the challenges because our body organizes ourselves to put our good eye forward to see, and when one eye is compromised, well, we're always asymmetric with our eyesight, and that affects our balance. But when one eye is really taken out of the picture, it has a profound impact on eyesight. I mean, on movement and balance. Okay.
It's a pain because you go to pour cream in their coffee cup and you miss by 2 inches,
Because your perception is gone. Depth perception requires 2 eyes. Yes. All righty. Well, if you're wearing glasses, for today's lesson, you don't need them because there's not going to be a lot to see, because when we're doing things with our eyes, it's a small movement. You feel free to leave them on if you just really absolutely feel like you need them in order to hear. Some people, it's like you need your glasses to see the lips in order to hear someone, and that's fine. We're going to work with eyes, and we'll probably do a couple lessons related to eyes because the eyes are really important for balance and for the flexibility in the parts of the body that we've been working in the last couple lessons, the movement in the upper spine. So let's warm up for a minute just to remind ourselves of all the parts of our body that move by doing a little bit of the throwing arrows. So you can take one hand, reach it behind you, and then release it palm up across your body so that if you look down, your arm is on the other side from your shoulder. So some of you are throwing on the same side. There you go. Now everybody's doing it across the body. And just feel the weight shift in your sit bones as you do that. If you're not already at the front of your chair, just that reminder, come out to the front. And sense your ribs. When do you feel the ribs in the front expand? When do you feel the ribs in the back expand? What do you do with your breathing? Do you inhale or exhale as you throw? What does the hip on the opposite side do? Does it lift up a little to help you throw? Good. And then come back to neutral. Just check in with your bottom, see if it feels the same left and right on the chair, or if one side has settled down. If you're thinking about posture, you're thinking about head, you're thinking about, gee, I'm just kind of stiff. This little throwing arrows thing from that lesson last week really is a nice way to reset things. Let's do it on the other side a few times. Check in to see if you're doing what you think you are on this side. Is your arm going across your body? And is your palm, how can you keep your palm up as you throw? It helps if your eyes look in the direction you're throwing. You can imagine there's a target on the other side and you're aiming for that target. And see what the other sit bone is doing. So which sit bone lifts up off the chair, the one on the same side or the opposite? Okay, good. All right. Just warms up some of the parts of the body to pay attention to. One more. Let's do one more throw on each side and see what happens in your feet. Does the weight pass over one foot to the other? All right. How much is everybody hearing the construction noise in my house? Is it bothering you?
Very faint.
Okay, if it's not bothering you, I'm not going to wear my headset because it's annoying to wear it. Dump trucks and squeaky things are going on out there. All right, so now for the eyes, everybody look up. And there's two kind of ways to look up. One is where you move your head and you tilt your chin and look up. And one is where you leave your head still and you can put your hand on your chin and your arm on your chest and it kind of holds your head still and look up. Again, there's something that's kind of in between where you're not holding it really fixed, but it's not way going up. And just see as you go up, you can look up with your eyes closed. And it's easier to sense. When you look up with your eyes closed, does one look up a little further than the other? Does like one feel eager to look up and the other feel a little sluggish? Just notice any differences. And do they look straight up or do you look a little bit off to the left or a little off to the right? You can let go of your chin now. Okay. And then look down and see, does one eye lead the way looking down? And is it the same eye that could look up or is it the opposite one? Very hard to perceive when your eyes are open because they're filled with seeing things, but when your eyes are closed, you can sense the differences a little more. You might sense some differences in the back of your neck as you look down, of one side feeling tighter than the other. And then look to the left and the right. And what's the smallest movement you can do with your eyes left and right that you can feel which side is easier? Maybe just even moving them a 1/4 inch. One side will feel, I don't know, juicier in there and one side feel restricted a little. And then take your eyes as far to your easy side as you can. And then open them and see what can you see when your eyes are all the way on that side. Just get a measurement of like, oh, you know, I can see the edge of that cupboard or. And then take your eyes to the other side with them closed. And then open them and see what you can see out of that eye. Okay. One more measurement, which is to go on a diagonal with your eyes and see which diagonal is easier to take your eyes. Eyes closed again to avoid the extra visual distraction. So we don't have to make a little chart of how your eyes are going, but just notice that they're asymmetric to some extent. And then we're going to do the lesson and see the impact that it has on the eyes. So you're going to take a finger and on one eye, find the outside edge of the eye and just wiggle your finger in a little circle very gently, like you're touching a butterfly. Okay. And then bring your finger to the inside corner of that eye and go in a little circle very gently. And then a few times, bring your eye to your finger to trace your eyelash so that it's going on this kind of up over a hill and down the hill because your eye is round there in the front. Just so light you can barely feel it. Okay, and put your hand down. And now begin to think of that eye as like a plum, the shape of a plum, and get a sense of its roundness, its size, its weight. And with your hand, with your tongue, feel the top of your palate inside your mouth on that side. There's kind of a dome of bone at the top of your mouth. And your eyeball sits just a little on top of that. And like a plum, it has depth, just to get a sense of how deep your eye is there. And after doing this, that eye might feel a little different than the other one. You could, in your mind's eye, trace and circle the plum in various directions. And you might find as you circle the plum of your eye, your tongue might be doing something in your mouth. And rest for a sec, close with both eyes closed, and get a sense if you can sense this eye differently than the other one. If it feels bigger or somehow different. And notice if one shoulder is a little more relaxed than the other. Sometimes just a little bit of play with the eye can relax the shoulder as well. And when you breathe in, do you breathe in more on one side than the other? Then let's go to the other eye for a moment and find the outside edge of the eye and just do those little tiny circles. Very light. Just moving the skin around there. And then find the inside corner of your eye and move the skin around. And then trace your eyelid back and forth over the roundness of your eye. And the whole eye doesn't stick out, so the plum is a little bit bigger than the circle that you feel. So just begin to sense that roundness. And rest your arm for a moment. And now touch your closed eyeball and right on top of your eyelid, your finger gentle like you're touching a little baby kitten, a butterfly, something soft. And whatever spot you chose, make a tiny little circle. And then move to another spot and make a tiny little circle. So it's like your finger connects to the skin, and when your finger circles, the skin of your eyelid is moving. And just keep finding different places to do little circles on the eye. And then rest your finger. Begin to imagine this eye as a plum sitting above the palate, so you could reach up with your tongue and find the top of your palate on this side. And then visualize that plum sitting right on top of the bone of the palate of the mouth and tracing a circle in every direction around that plum. You could imagine that you wanted to paint the plum a different color in there and that you had this inner paintbrush and you're just trying to cover every surface of the plum with paint. And rest for a moment. Rest and sense if the heaviness of this eye, if it feels, you can sense a little bit the three-dimensionality of the eye. And imagine that now both eyes have a handle that protrudes from the back of them out through the back of your head. So it's almost like a puppeteer could control your eyes from behind. And move your eyes a little left and right, getting a sense of the back of the eyes leading the motion. Or you could think about slopping the eyes, sort of just sloshing them in this liquid nest that they're in. They just go left and right. So that it isn't like if your eye was just a fixed point and you took it left and right, there wouldn't be that sense of the back moving. But with these handles out the back, you can feel as your handles go left, your eyeballs, the front of them, go to the right. And as the back handles go right, the front of the eyes goes left. Then with those handles in the back of your eyes protruding out the back, lift those handles up behind you so that your eyes point down, and then let those handles go down a little so those eyes point up. The part you see out of points up. It's almost like the handles are directly opposite the pupils of your eye. And when you move them from the back, it feels different. And now, just with your eyes closed, wiggle your eyes around a little bit and see if it feels moisture around the eyes, like that somehow it's been lubricated a little bit. All right. Now take your eyes left and right again while they're closed and see which direction is easier right now. We're going to work with that side first. Okay. And imagine that there's a ribbon and it starts right in the middle of your forehead. Maybe like, you know where that spot where you furrow your brows is? So that there's a line that starts there and it goes out towards your ear. It goes over your eyebrow. It goes across your temple. It meets your hairline. And then it keeps going around, but just to the middle of the back of your head. The eye circles around the side of your head. Or the line does. And so you end up making a circle, not a circle, but a half circle, like a letter C. You're going from the spot between your eyes, just above your eyebrows, to the back of, center of the back of your head. Back and forth, imagining this line. And some parts of the line might be easier to sense than others. So take your same side index finger, find that spot where you furrow your brow, And then gently trace above your eyebrow, past your temple, your hairline, to the middle of the back, and back again. And there's two ways to do this. You could keep your head very still and trace this line, or you could leave your finger still. So put your finger on your brow and then move your head so it's your head that moves and your finger stays still. And to do this, to move your head in this half circle, you're going to have to do a fair amount of twisting in the rest of you. One sit bone might have to come a little forward. Like remember when we turned around ourselves in a lesson with one sit bone going forward, the weight might have to shift from one sit bone to another. It's like, how do you contort yourself in a way to let your finger be still? And it might be that there's a different place to put your finger. If you start a little further over to the side, it might be easier rather than starting in the front. Okay, and put your hand down and rest. I have to say, sometimes this eye work and the eye play can get overwhelming, and sometimes people start to feel a little queasy or dizzy as they're doing this. If you do, just stop, open your eyes, rest, skip a motion or two in the lesson. Because if you keep going when you feel that way, you end up, it takes a little longer to recover from that queasy feeling. And I don't want to push anybody into that. Okay. Now on the same side, let's do another line that goes right from the bridge of your nose onto the cheekbone underneath and goes around, and it'll just go on the tip of your ear and to the back. And in the back of your skull, it lands a little bit lower than when you went around before. Go ahead and sometimes move your finger to find that line. And then sometimes move your head to find the line. Yeah. All right. This is getting to be too much out there. Rest for a moment. I'm just adjusting my audio.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Okay. So now imagine for a moment, you've got those two ribbons. You could visualize them as like a stripe of color from just above your eye and just below your eye on that side. Now, as if you had a crayon, fill in the space in your imagination, not with your finger so much, but just your imagination, as if your finger was going, or your mind's eye was going like this, to make a big band of color that goes around the side of you. And feel as you do it, the little motions in your nose. As you imagine this, as your eyes go up and down, as you fill in the spot all the way around your head. I'd be actually very curious for those of you who have lost some sense of smell, if this lesson actually does something related to it, because it opens up and moves the channels of your nose where the air goes through as you do this. And see if you can feel something even down in your sit bones and your feet as you're going back and forth coloring. It's like, do you ever use an Etch-a-Sketch when, or your kids use an Etch-a-Sketch that, and you're trying to color it in? That's what you're doing. Okay, good. And rest for a moment. And now, with your eyes open, now let's do it with the eyes closed. Eyes closed, look to that side and see if it feels like you're moving differently. And you could look up to that side or down to that side. Okay. And then just open your eyes and see if there's more world on one side of you than the other. If you're more aware of one side. If one side of you feels calmer. Okay. And then let's play with the other eye. And with the other eye, if we haven't, have we done this, the little circles on this other eye? We did them on one eye, but do those little circles on your eyelid on the eye we're about to work with, the other one. And then rest for a moment. And begin to imagine the line that goes from the furrow at the top of in your middle of your forehead, around over your eyebrow to the back of your head. But do it just in your imagination first. Yeah, if you can imagine it. When you imagine it, then the sensations in your face are magnified. And feel, if you feel something like when we were throwing arrows, a sense that as your eye goes around your head, you're pulled onto one sit bone. Something might change in your chest a little as you imagine drawing that line. Back and forth, like you're just trying to darken that line in your brain. And then bring your finger up and trace that line. And go all the way, that line goes all the way around your head to the back. Yeah, and you might have to turn your head a little to get to the back. So let it be right on your skin. Yeah. So you're actually touching yourself as this line goes around, and let that line go high on the back of your head. Yeah. So it's just like a parallel to the floor as it goes around. Good. And then a few times leave your fingers still and do whatever you have to do. Slide one knee forward, twisting to make yourself able to do that line with your hand being still. And feel for motion in your chest. If your hand is still, the motion has to happen. There might be a little bit of arching your back or rounding your back that helps, or side bending. Good. Okay, let it go. And imagine the line that goes from the bridge of your nose around to the center of the back of your head. And after you imagine it a few times, use your finger to trace it. And then leave your finger still and move your body so your head can, your finger can trace the line even if your finger doesn't move. So it has that twist. Try and keep your finger touching yourself, touching your head the whole time. So can your fingers stay still and your head move? It's not so easy for, okay, and let that go. And then bring your Etch-a-Sketch skills to use to color it in. You don't need to use your hand, just use your imagination, but just kind of do this zigzaggy line from the top line to the bottom line, all around your head. And if you relax your jaw a little bit, you'll find it easier to do this Etch-a-Sketch. And your eyeballs going up and down. And come back around. And rest for a moment. And just with your eyes closed now, take them a little as if they were going to look to that side of you. See if it's gotten a little easier to go a little further. And look up the middle and see if that's gotten a little easier. Okay. Now take your finger into the furrow between your eyebrows there, just above your eyebrows, and a few times trace around the circle. Like you had a headband on and you were tracing the headband. Good. And go the other direction. And then leave your fingers still and take your head and move your head so that your head, you trace the same thing without the arm moving. And go the other direction. And feel all the motion in your chest that's necessary for doing that. Okay, and rest for a moment. We can try it with the other hand. Might be easier with this hand. I'm always optimistic every time I get to switch hands. Maybe this side will be easier. So first your arm tracing this. And as it goes toward the back, if you push your chest and belly forward, it's easier for the arm to reach. And if there's a part that you can't reach, just turn around and go the other way. And then leave your hand still and take your head in the circle. Okay. Let it go. And just as you're sitting there, get a sense of what it feels like to sit. Do you feel a little taller than you did at the beginning of the class? A little bit more upright in the head and neck. We're going to do just a few more movements. So just like we were imagining a ribbon going around our head, we're going to just pick one side, a ribbon that goes right through your eye, sort of toward the outside of your eye, down. And let's trace it with our fingers first. It comes up the back of your head, down across your eye. And close your eyes as you're doing that, because you'll sense more. And then take your finger away and do that in your imagination. It's as if somebody was painting, you were painting some color circle around your head there. And there's a subtle way that your head nods and unnods as you do this in your imagination. Okay. And the head moves just a little bit right where your spine connects to your head. So feel up the back of your neck with your hands. And somewhere kind of about even with the back of your nose, with the bottom of your nose in the front, put one finger under your nose and a couple fingers on the back of your spine with the other hand. That's about the level where your spine goes into your skull. And when you paint this ribbon that goes around the side like this, your spine, the top of your spine has these two little cups on it. And then your head has these two round bulgy things that go in the cup. So it's moving right in that little part of your spine, the relationship between the spine and the bottom of your skull. See if you can sense in that little cup this little rocking motion. And try and get a sense of where that cup is, like somewhere between the back of your head and your nose, there's the spot that your spine is. And where is it? If you imagine it further forward than it is, it doesn't feel as nice. Or if you imagine it further back than it is, it doesn't feel as nice. But there's a sweet spot for this circle to go around. Okay, and rest for a moment. And see if one side of you feels taller than the other. And let's do a few movements with the other side. So with your finger, you can trace the line kind of right through your eyeball, up around to the back, comes under, goes up the side near your mouth. And after you have that established with the finger, put the hand down and use your mind, eyes closed, to paint around your head that way. And go the other direction. Seeing if you can feel that little cup that your head is resting in. And pause, rest for a moment. And just sitting there with your eyes closed, look up. And see if you can feel that whole plum shape of your eyes moving in the socket. And look down. And as you look up and down and alternate, see if there's a little sense of the cup holding up your skull being a little bit lubricated and sliding with, as your eyeballs slide in their socket, your skull slides in its cups to look up and down. And then take your eyeballs left and right, again, still closed, just a small motion, don't go to the end of the range. And see if you can find just a little lower in your neck, there's a place where it feels like this movement connects with, and a little, that sloshing feel, a joint gliding left and right as your eyes go. Rest that for a moment. And very gently nod a yes, an up and down yes. And sense for those two cups just under your skull. So the tiniest nod yes you can imagine. And then nod no. So your nose going left and right to feel the spot just a little lower than that, where most of that effort can happen when it's just a little motion like this. Okay, rest for a moment. And then with your nose, the tip of your nose, make the littlest tiny circle you can. And just feel at the base of your skull that might be a little looser, more liquid in there. Let's try one movement from our last lesson from Tuesday, where we scooped up some water in our hands and then we imagined we were drinking from our hands, a licking. And see if something feels different in the base of your spine, at the top there, and in your eyeballs as you do that. If you can sense that your eyes have to move and the base of your spine moves a little, then you can lick a little more easily. Alrighty. Go ahead and stand up for a moment and just see what standing feels like after all this eye work. And just using those little muscles, the little movements in the base of the spine, the top of the spine, look around yourself. See if things feel a little looser in there. Look up at your ceiling. And not so much worried about range, but just the quality of the fluidity of being able to move your head in different places and directions. And get yourself in a place where you can put a hand on your chair or a wall and check out your balance. Transfer your weight over to one hip and perhaps come to standing on one foot or one foot with a kickstand down. And feel the little movements in the base of your skull and in your eyeballs as you transfer your weight onto that foot. Eyes closed again will help, but that's why you have a wall or a chair to hold on to if you need it. And try transferring your weight to the other side and feel just the tiny little movements in the base of your skull and your eyes that help you find yourself over that foot. All right, come and sit down. And just notice your mood. And I'd love to hear from people how this lesson is affecting them. What are you noticing in yourself? What are you curious about?
I find it pretty hard to, with my eyes closed, to know if I can tell I'm looking down, but I can't tell if I'm looking up, for instance. It was an odd experience.
Uh-huh. And it's interesting because where our head position is on our neck will affect that. So if you're if your head is a little forward of yourself, it's going to be easier to look down than look up. And when the head is back a little bit, looking up might become easier. Yeah. And so this lesson really points out where we are in our head and neck position, which says, oh, a little bit more work in that area will make that come a little easier for you. Yeah. Yeah. Scott.
I felt like when I concentrated on that spot on the back of my neck, that I had sort of more
Oops.
where
You,
normally you'd
you
be more
froze.
of a
Could you say it again, please? Because you froze just at the most important word.
No, I felt like when I concentrated, when we were looking, and I concentrated on the back spot there where you talked about, I felt like I had micro control over the movement. I was getting
Yes.
very small movements where usually we were getting big movements.
Uh-huh. And to have a full range of motion, we need both those big motions and the micro movements. It's like the big motions get us close to what we want to look at, and then those micro movements let us hone in on things.
Yeah.
I think with Parkinson's, people often focus more on the big motions, but the little ones are important too. Yeah. Did anybody find this lesson just like annoying and irritating and challenging? Sometimes people feel that with it. I just want to acknowledge those.
I felt like I wanted to take a nap.
It's really, our eyes use a tremendous amount of our energy. And when we're doing eye work, that can happen. And if you have time to just lie down and snooze for 5 minutes after this, go for it.
I always have time for a nap.
That's the nice part about being retired. Barbara. Unmute yourself, Barbara.
Three dots. Okay.
Yeah, unmute.
No, you're on unmute. You want to say something?
How about while Barbara's unmuting, Rich, what do you want to say?
Well, I thought that in this session, I felt feelings you don't normally have between your eyeball and the balance points and so on. So I thought it was worthwhile from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's fun to like feel like the eyes as plums sitting on the palette. It's just a different way of feeling ourselves and of the eyes being three-dimensional, moving in the head. And it really, the result of that is a more lubricated eyeball and more ability to see what's around you and improve balance. It's just one more piece of the puzzle. Yeah. Barbara.
I'm unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised that my weaker side, my left side, seemed to be the one that had bigger range at the beginning. But it also was like not as solid in all the movement. The right side felt more there, like the muscle. I guess it's the strength, but the range was more.
If you think about what it takes to turn, so it's your left side that is the weaker side?
Yeah.
So to turn to the left, you lift your right hip a little, and you turn the left side of your body forward, and that gives you the range. So it makes sense that your stronger side helps give your weaker side that range of motion, because it supports it.
I was saying when we were at the beginning, our eyes were straight, our body stayed straight, and our eyes moved, and you said which side was the more, but that's what you're explaining with that.
Yeah, that it's still the other side's job to help you get the range, but it's the same side's job to provide some support under it. So it's not surprising that combination of feelings you had.
Just for the eye.
Yeah, for the eye. Yeah. So we'll probably play with eyes again in different ways over time as we go, because it's just all connected. And we'll play some more with the atlas and the axis, the first and second vertebrae up here, because they have a huge amount that also works with tongues. I haven't talked to any of you guys. Is anybody having challenges with tongue mobility, drooling? Okay.
Drooling.
Okay. This lesson is actually an important one for that, because this little motion in here, that little nodding and the moving in those cups is important for changing the angle of the mouth and the mobility of the tongue. So we may play with some of that as well. Alrighty. I think that's a good place to leave things for today, so I'm going to turn off the recording.